Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Roanoke Valley Libertarians online meeting. We've been trying to do this weekly with different people, giving different ideas to help build excitement throughout the communities. Because, as most people know, NODA, which means none of the above, typically wins when it comes to the election. So people are feeling disenfranchised. So if we can change the way we vote with, like last week's 5-star voting system, or if it's open primaries, whatever makes it better for voters to get excited, that's what we're planning on and trying to do. And if that's what we get excited about, then we can start pushing our legislation here in Virginia to do and follow that course. So today we've got Steven Richardson from Open Primaries and Let Us Vote.org. It's an Open Primaries project, and he's going to give us what Open Primaries is and all that good stuff and see what's it all about. So Steve, please take it away.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate the invitation and hope we can both learn something. All of us learn something here today. I hadn't ever heard it put quite that way, but I like that. None of the above tends to win because of low turnout and exclusion of people that don't belong to the party. So I've been independent for it's been over 30 years now. Kind of broke out and actually first got involved in politics after voting for Ross Perot in the 1992 election. So anyway, I discovered the Libertarians in Wyoming, and I played a pretty significant role in that. But really, I'm here to talk about more generally independence, and I got connected with the folks that are now known as Open Primaries when I moved here to Virginia in 1999. I didn't do anything politically for about 5 years, but I discovered them through a publication called the Neo-Independent, and that was put together by a woman named Jackie Salet, who had actually begun an outfit called the Committee for a Unified Independent Party back in 1988. So they've been at it for a while, and I went to a conference in New York City where they opened it up to the membership and said, do we really want to be a party, or do we want to do something else? And I think it was, well, by consensus anyway, we decided, no, we don't really want to play the party game. We want to just see what we can do to improve the voting rights for independent voters. Okay. And so they sort of gradually got away from that name, CUIP, C-U-I-P, and rebranded themselves as independentvoting.org. Okay. And it was largely run with a core group of people, I don't know, several hundred anyway, that were affiliated with the New York Independence Party. And John Updike, who's now the president of Open Primaries, was a director of development and for independent voting. Okay, this is like 2005-ish. And a few years later, I don't know the exact date, but he broke off. I think he hooked a whale and was able to go off on his own and start Open Primaries, which obviously was focused on that specific element of the independent voting agenda. And then more recently, as you pointed out, Brian, I think it was just last year or earlier this year, they started to Let Us Vote. And so what's really happening there is they realized that, I don't know, partly for fundraising purposes, but generally Let Us Vote is a 501c3, which is educational, okay, tax deductible contributions, educational only kind of focus. And Open Primaries is now pursuing more aggressively a litigation strategy. And I'll get into that a little bit more later. But Open Primaries, if you go to their website, you'll see that their mission is to improve the rights of independent voters by trying to get some enforcement of the right to not join a party problem is that the system as it stands disenfranchises people that really don't want to belong to any party. And they have every which way. The major parties have all sorts of tools and tricks that block out any challenge to the duopoly. So Republicans generally have been outright hostile to open primaries. Democrats, on the other hand, haven't been any help. We saw, the independent voting groups saw all along that, the Democrats are supposed to be sort of a big tent group, more open-minded, and the name, Democrats would lead you to believe that they really cared about the rights of all voters. But I was part of an effort in the 2020 election where Jackie, the founder of all this stuff, had put a group of us together and went straight to the Democratic National Committee and said, look, guys, you can really capture a lot of independent votes if you just open up your primaries. As you all probably know, this is a state-by-state thing. The states run the elections, and it's different in every state, but what they all have in common is they're all run by one or the other. They all have major presence of the political parties, the red and the blue, if you will. And they hold that pretty tightly. But from the national committee, they could decide as a matter of strategy, policy, what have you, to that they need to open primaries and all this, and they could bring pressure to bear on the state organizations to do that. And because they run the show, they could do that in a heartbeat. But we didn't even get a response to that letter from Jackie to the DNC. So just to get into what open primaries is, so there are different types of open primaries, right? You might think that it's just, everybody on one ballot, but no, there's sort of this thing that we have in Virginia, which is really a semi-open primary. As you know, we don't register by party, so come election day, we can, or primary election day, we can decide whether we want a blue ballot or a red ballot, okay? But that still is limiting because we have to decide, well, which set of candidates do we care the most about, for better or worse? We might be wanting to vote against somebody, but in any event, we have to pick. And so we kind of forego any opportunity to influence the selection on the other side, right? Well, what we really want, Open Primaries group, is a nonpartisan primary. All the candidates on one ballot, so that every voter, no matter their registration, can go in and vote on the whole slate of candidates in the primary. Of course, then you have to narrow it down. You have to find a way to get to the general election. And so is that going to be the top two candidates advance and it's a two-way race, or is it going to be a top four? There's been even a top five. I mean, do you use ranked choice voting to do that, or is it just straight plurality vote? You use some other method like approval voting. There's a number of different ways to do it, but really, we're not really going to be satisfied until we have truly a nonpartisan primary. The other thing is that how do you get there? Okay, so some states, I don't think it's more than about 10 states have initiative and referendum. So if you collect enough signatures, you can get an issue on the ballot and let the voters decide. And that you could use that to try to get the open primaries. But we don't have that here in Virginia. But the second strategy that's used, of course, is a legislative. You find someone friendly to that supports your cause, and they put a bill in front of the legislature, and you go that route. I participated with Delegate Rasul in Roanoke, in fact, several years ago. He tried several times, and it didn't go anywhere. Again, because the powers that be aren't crazy about this, and it doesn't seem to matter too much which side they're on. But like I say, in Virginia, I personally have noticed that Republicans are outright hostile. They had some funny stuff. I forget all the details, but they definitely were trying to keep Ron Paul out of the race back in 2012. And then somewhere along the way, they didn't want Trump, it's fun, ironically. And so every chance they get, the Republicans go with what they call a firehouse primary, where it's by invitation only, and they don't even ask the voters who they want to nominate. Okay. And like I say, that especially seems to be important in the presidential race. And the other thing I've noticed, because I've been following this for a while, is that every year some Republican delegate or senator proposes a bill. Sometimes there are more than one of them, to try to get us to register by party. Well, it's pretty obvious where that's headed. If you register by party, then they know who their people are, but more importantly, they know who their people aren't. And so they can say, aha, and they can, the next step, of course, is to close their primaries, which is headed in the exact opposite direction. So I've testified against those bills. And unfortunately, even the Republicans, the Republican voters are not crazy about that idea. They like things just the way they are, but that doesn't keep the elected officials from trying. So what's happening right now, like I said, the Open Primaries is Let Us Vote is brand new. They have a power hour that I've joined a couple of times. It's once a month, and they, I'm sure, would welcome anyone who's wanted to participate. And that's sort of an action-oriented thing. Write a letter to the editor, or contact your delegate or something like that. They have something that they ask you to do every month. The Open Primaries is they're getting enough money, and they're getting some traction on real cases. I participated in one a while back. New Jersey is one of the worst. New York and New Jersey are two of the worst states in the country for independence. And we challenged, I wrote part of an amicus brief in the New Jersey lawsuit. It didn't go anywhere, but the idea there was that the complaint was that you have private organizations in control of this, but the taxpayers are paying for it. That's one of the big issues also. Is that if they want to control the primary, let them raise the money themselves, not use all voters' money to do that. Now they have lawsuits in Maryland and Pennsylvania, and what else? There's another eastern state. They have a lawsuit. It escapes me right at the moment. But anyway, they have about a handful of different cases going right now. Oh, Florida. Yeah, big one. Florida, they were part of this. As you might have heard, Supreme Court was asked to take up the case down there, and they refused to do it. But they got really close. So a lot of growth. This whole issue has really taken off. It's been a long game. Like I say, it started in '88 from a real organized effort to fight it, and now you have groups that have proliferated. There's books galore out there about it, and I think there's more awareness among the public of the issue. Probably the bottom line indicator, the most important indicator of our growth, is in the Gallup poll. Every quarter they ask people, it's a statistically valid sample, nationwide poll of how do you identify? Do you identify as a Republican, Democrat, or an independent? And we've been hovering around 40% for quite a while. We bumped up against the 50% mark, and now the latest, we're up to 47% of the voters, which speaks to your none of the above remark at the outset, right? So the thing that I thought was important about that, of course, the Republicans and the Democrats are both below 30%. And what I thought was interesting about this last one, I compared it to what they said, the same poll from Gallup a year right before the election, October 2024. And at that time, we were at 41%. Okay. And so that 6%, 5 percentage points came from the Republicans, which indicates that the president is ticking off a lot of the people that probably voted for him last year. And then and 1% came from the Democrats. So that's interesting also. That means that They didn't leave the Republicans and go over the Democrats. They left the Republicans and became independent. And some Democrats are getting tired of waiting around for a real, valid or viable opposition to take shape. So anyway, that's sort of a lay of the land. I didn't give you a whole lot of details, but that's a story and a little bit of context that might be helpful.
Let me ask you, I know with my group, when I started in 2010, the Roanoke Valley Libertarians, it was, we would get people to show up. And of course you would have scragglers. People would come in. Election years, you would get people to show up. And then once the election's over, they're gone. And then around 2017, 18, and I don't want to say it was Trump being elected. And I don't want to say it was Trump because this probably was brewing multiple, presidents before him. It wasn't just, he wasn't the thing. Since then, it's been a nightmare trying to get people to come out and be a libertarian, even though it's got these high independent rates. People don't want to come out. So it's almost like everyone's dug in their heels. Either I'm Trump or this side, or I'm this side. There's no in between. They won't even come sniffing around. Have you seen so you said 88 was when y'all started, really correct? Have y'all seen that it's been kind of fluctuating a little, or a lot harder to get people to come over and even explore the open primary?
Well, as you know, both parties have been vilifying their opposition since at least the 2016 election. And the other candidate is the Antichrist. And that is, that's one element of it. But the other element, and we've been fighting this since before 88, right, is the wasted vote syndrome. Right. This is what every third party faces. And, when I was in the 90s, I felt pretty free to vote my conscience, and I was libertarian, and I didn't pay any attention to any of that stuff. We got the usual 3 or 4% of the vote, and we were happy with that. It kept our minor party status. We heard all these wasted vote arguments, but we still got our few percent a year. That really got tested over the last decade, I'm going to say, because of how close the races were. I mean, I just couldn't believe how close the races, 2020 and 2024. A lot of folks that might have voted for a third party, Libertarian, Green, what have you, really felt like they needed to choose one of those two major parties because, to stop Biden or to stop Trump, whatever, that wasted vote syndrome really took hold of a lot of people. And so, and it's because of how angry I'm going to say, the polarization of the electorate, they're really driving it to extremes and treating the other side as the outright enemy. I think contributed to that. Right.
Now you were talking about the open primary system. It allows you to choose candidates from across party lines. Which style do you recommend, or do you have a preference? Would you be picking all right, my favorite out of the Republicans, the favorite out of the Democrat? Would you want 5-star voting, ranked choice, whatever? How would you see it working the best to get more people energized to come out and support a candidate? Or would it turn into what we've got going on right now, where it's like $1 billion to run for president? That means no one really is going to be able to run for president. That like if you just got fed up, $250 million U.S. Senate. That's ridiculous. How do we so what's your open primary? How do you choose the candidates? How would you like to see it done? Do you think it's the best out of
Yeah. Well, one thing I didn't mention earlier is that, the purpose of the primary is to narrow the field, plain and simple. And once you get into different ways of counting the votes, and ranked choice voting is also called instant runoff voting and single transferable vote, whatever. But if you have all the information that you need to eliminate the also rans in one vote, then you could probably get by without a primary at all.
Right.
So I think that's something, but people probably aren't ready for that. There's Louisiana has had, I think they messed it up here recently, but they had what's called a jungle primary, which is a good name for it. But I don't have any problem with it, but I'm into politics. I'm into the math, and I know that I have a little more faith than most maybe in the systems. But
now,
I'd say come one, come all. Pardon?
What exactly is the jungle primary? Is that top two, or what's that?
No, I think it's like it's the closest thing I think to the nonpartisan primary that I described before, where everybody's on one ballot. Yeah, and I don't know exactly how many advance, but that's sort of arbitrary whether you advance 2 or 4. California, which that's a big state, and I think it was about 2010 when they passed their top 2 system. And so the issue there, the Republicans hate it, but because they're going to end up with Democrats anyway, and but the Democrats end up with kind of so with the top 2, and there's about twice as many Democrats as Republicans in California, so they end up with 2 Democrats running against each other, and the Republicans are kind of frozen out. That's sort of like Libertarians have felt for many years. You really probably are at a disadvantage in an open primary, actually. And I've seen a lot of Libertarians kind of complain about it. At least with the way it is now, you get on the ballot, you have your own spot on the ballot. People get to vote for you. With a nonpartisan primary, you would be that same. People would still be able to vote for you, but you'd be knocked out in the primaries, right? Your candidates wouldn't even get to the general election. As far as my preference, so I studied political. I went back to school and I studied political science after I moved here to Virginia. I went to George Mason and I took a grad school class on political science, and I wrote a paper at the time. It was pretty interesting. I don't know if you remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger became governor of California.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they had tossed out Gray Davis, I think was his name, and I think it was a tax issue or something. But anyway, he got thrown out of office, and they had to have a special election. And the barrier was so low for getting on the ballot, they ended up with 135 candidates on the ballot, which was really interesting. And I was taking this class at the time. So I wrote my term paper on this, and I compared I studied all the voting systems. And I determined that, and I was libertarian, so I determined that for libertarians anyway, that approval voting was the best method. Approval voting is where you vote, you can cast as many votes as there are candidates. You just cast the votes for anyone that you could live with, that you approve of. And you count the votes. Whoever gets the most votes wins. It's pretty simple. And there's a Center for Election Science that here in Washington that promotes that, and they have all sorts of information about that shows the math and why they figure that's best. I saw something just last week pointing out the flaws in ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting was responsible for election of a Democrat in Alaska over 2 Republicans. And they said that was a classic case of what the flaws of ranked choice voting, where you have what's called a monotonicity. You have features of the voting system. It's perverse if you would to cast a vote for your favorite candidate and that your vote would actually contribute to your candidate losing. And I can't go through all the details right now, but they have a long story. They tell the whole story on their website. It's pretty interesting. So it doesn't, it probably is not a high odds thing, but that is a flaw in ranked choice voting. I think it's something like 15% of the time it's going to give you some kind of perverse outcome. But anyway, I determined that approval was the best for libertarians, or I think it was for any third party actually. But it's not going to change. Typically, it's not going to change the outcome of the vote. It would change your percentage of the vote, but it's not going to. The voting method isn't going to like completely shift to one party's advantage or the other. It's just a big part of it becomes what can people understand and have confidence in. That's what it's all about. If you get too fancy with it, then people won't trust the system. And so all of this, the arguments about the mail voting and the machines and all that kind of stuff, it's even worse if they don't trust the method itself. And so you got to be careful about this. Condorcet voting is probably the most sophisticated. Condorcet is the method that basically pits every candidate against every other candidate. And you can do that if you rank your choices. If there's 8 candidates, you would have to rank them 1 through 8. But then it's just a matrix, calculation, and it can spit out like who would prevail if, and theoretically, they all were paired up against one another. But you have all the information that you need if every voter has given you their full ranking of the candidates. There's a lot of strategic voting that goes on, and the ones that are most susceptible to that, ranked choice voting is partially, but the one that's worse, I forget the name of it. It's a method that allows you to weight your votes. So this is where, there's a lot of accusations right now, even in Virginia, they'll claim that, Republicans want to close their primary because they figure Democrats are coming in and getting a red ballot to mess with what should be the Republicans' choice of their candidate, right? So that's a fair concern. But some voting methods really lend themselves to that, and certainly any method that allows you to weight your vote, so you can put all your votes on one candidate, as opposed to splitting them up with a more simple ordering of your votes. Like a ranked choice, you don't weight them, you just put them in a rank order, and that's fairly straightforward. But even that can lead to some game playing. So all of the methods have flaws. They're not going to have a huge impact. What I think they do is they make people think a little more, and maybe more likely to believe that their vote counts, and they have a better chance of having their true choice reflected in the vote. And so it might improve turnout. And like I say, the approval, I had some examples that showed that it actually does improve the performance of third-party candidates.
What are some of the primary criticism or concerns about open primary system that you've heard?
Well, the parties will say, well, this is party business. You don't have any business in our selecting our candidates, and if you don't like it, you can go start your own party.
Right.
Yeah, and that's even though they know that doing that, they put up all sorts of barriers to prevent us from doing that. As you mentioned before, the whole system runs on money, and they've got the corporate, the PACs and all that. They've got all that locked up, and they've had 100 years to brainwash the public into believing that we have a two-party system when we only have a two-party system because the two major parties like it that way. And I'll tell you also, there's a long history of what happened after Ross Perot. That was not supposed to happen. And so the obvious thing was, of course, they shut off access to the debates. The Committee on Presidential Debates said, no, we gotta watch this. We gotta make sure that you have to reach a certain threshold that proves that you're a viable candidate. Well, that's understandable. You don't want a bunch of kooks given a platform on a national stage, right? So that's the way they get in there. But then they, if you only get popular if you get the press. But to get the press, raise enough money and to get enough signatures or to get enough awareness of the voting public that you even exist. And so you're right back into the money. And so they really guard the it's like a moat around the castle, that's there's one thing that as ugly as it is right now between the two parties, the one thing that they always agree on is that they want to keep it bipartisan. They don't want tripartisan.
Oh, no. Well, now I know when you were talking about like media attention, Larry Sharp, he's the Libertarian running for governor in New York, and he spoke about it, and he said it's a payola system pretty much. If whatever party was paying for ads, the media would talk about us. I think, and I do think that's a true statement. It's if we were buying ads, buying on my local news station, they would discuss us, but they can't. Even when it's a three-party race, they only say the top two, and they can't say the Libertarian candidate. Or even if it was like Princess Blanding in the last governor's race, they could not say her name. And that even though I didn't agree with her, it still bothered me that they couldn't do that. Places that have open primaries, have y'all seen any? Does it show any uptick for voter turnout?
Or
have y'all looked at that?
I think the main thing that's happened, like in California, they're the ones that have had it for a long time. And what's changed, and this is a big plus for an open primary or ranked choice, even within a party, it has this effect. There's the races aren't as nasty, right? You have every candidate has an incentive to go after your second choice vote. Okay. So even if they don't want to offend voters that might not pick them for number one, but would pick them for number two. Okay. And so they are a little more friendly to all the voters. And then it also has changed the attitude in the actual legislature that the two parties have worked a lot better with one another as a result of this. And I don't understand all the details, but it really it's a big step in the right direction versus what we've been doing. The ranked choice puts everybody kind of in a it's going to be at the margins is how you're going to win that race, right? Because you don't want to be eliminated at the you don't want to come in last. You want to be the second choice vote, so that you survive and get to go to the general election.
Right. All right. Well, that's good to hear. Hopefully that can bring. Like I said, I just want to see more people getting active out, just making. Because I can have. I'll go wherever, and they'll tell me 30 minutes about how bad the Democrats are, how bad the Republicans are, but you got to vote for this person because we can't waste our vote, and any way I can get more people out there, that's good. How many states did you say? How many states? You said California. How many more states are using open primary?
I should have that at the tip of my tongue, and I'm afraid I don't. It's I'm sorry, I don't know.
Oh, that's fine.
They like I say, it's you. It depends on whether you count the semi-open, and I think it's almost half have one or the other. Okay. I think the outright open primaries is. I don't think it's more than about 10. I think there's another dozen or so that are like us that have a semi-open. I think there are. No,
go ahead. I'll let you finish. Well, what roles do independents and unaffiliate voters play in the open primaries? Are they they're active with coming out and taking care of it too? I guess. Do you feel?
Well, I think in most cases it's like it is here, where it's still really just the two parties. I don't know that anyone has uh, well, there might be. Sorry, I don't have the facts. There might be one or two states that have a nonpartisan primary, what I consider a real open primary, but most of them it's just between the only primary elections are the Democrat and the Republican primaries, and most states it's just going to be, except for California, where it's everybody's on there, and only two advance. The semi-open primary states, it's going to be just the two. It's going to be two ballots, two different ballots.
Right. How does open primaries handle voter privacy, particularly regarding party affiliation?
What's our position on that, or?
Well, yeah, how do they handle voter privacy, particularly regarding the party affiliation? Is there any way? And that was one of the questions someone wrote to me, was how do they handle privacy?
Yeah, well, that's the issue here, is that we have privacy now because we're not registered by party. If it's truly open, I don't know that you might be registered with the party, but it doesn't matter because everybody has the same
ballot
rights. Yeah, everybody's looking at the same rights. So I would, I don't know, from administrative, like when you show up at the poll, why would they have any reason to ask for your, they need to verify your address, but they would have no reason to ask for your registration if everybody's looking at the same ballot. The only reason to prove that you're a party member would be if they had a separate ballot, if it was closed.
Right. Okay. How do open primaries impact campaign strategies for candidates from major and minor parties? I know you spoke about them being nicer. Is there any other things that you could think of?
No, I mean, it's just the incentive that you want to get as many votes as you can, and so that you clear the threshold, whether it's top 4 or top 2, right? And to get to the general election, and it's just not as simple as, and you might be up against somebody in the same party, so right. It just opens things up. There's a lot more recognition that all voters we're not just trying to appeal to our base, we're trying to appeal to everyone, and that has shown in California to last going into the actual assembly, or the sessions, is that they continue to, because they have voters from both sides voting for them. They take that into consideration in how they behave once they are actually elected.
Okay. Is there any studies or data showing the effects of an open primary on the election outcome?
Well, that's the point that I was trying to make earlier. I don't think they can really show that what would have happened, the counterfactual, what would have happened if they didn't have the open primary. But I think that all the studies have shown kind of what I discovered, which is that at the margin it might make a difference, but you can't really point to the voting system or the voting method as really favoring, one party or one candidate over another, just by design.
Right.
The only thing that's pretty clear is that the plurality system that we have right now, and this is because of something called Duverger's law, right? That which is basically the wasted vote idea. If you have a plurality, if this is how you count the votes, then you're gonna tend to get a two-party system. And for that reason, the two major parties don't want to change because they are gonna they're gonna lose votes. But whether it's, you know, which party is gonna be hurting the most, you know, the ones that I guess you know, the party in power is the one that wants to protect the status quo, right? And that's a state by state thing. And so if it's a red state, then the Republicans are going to be against change, and if it's a blue state, the Democrats are going to be against change. They want to keep it just the way it is because they've gerrymandered the districts, and you know they've been winning. Why would they want to change anything? So, but the main thing is that when push comes to shove, they would even agree with each other, with their sworn enemy, on this issue, because they don't want the vote splitting and the waste, you know, the third party coming in there and and peeling away, you know, one side or the other. If they're in the minority, they might welcome that because the minority is not a threat. You know, the libertarians aren't going to take the election, but if the libertarians are, you know, can come in and take more votes from the Republican, the Democrats will be all for that. But they're not so crazy about forming coalitions or having you know, challengers from third parties that they will shake up the basic two-party system. They still sort of believe that they just can take, you know, wait their turn, and then they, you know, they're gonna vilify the people in power and bring down the governor and get their own person in there. And when they do, they're going to want to keep it the way it is. And once they have an open primary type system, it's a can of worms. I mean, they can't put that genie back in the bottle. So that's why I think back in this 2020, when we approached the DNC, you know, they just weren't ready for something like that, to open up primaries, you know, on a nationwide basis. It's definitely a case by case, and it tends to be, you know, based on which party has the upper hand at the time.
Right. Is there any legal or constitutional challenges that have been raised regarding open primaries?
Well, yeah, not against it. They've shot. I mean, they have arguments against it, and they're basically based on, you know, tradition, and that's why, like, the Supreme Court, you know, was asked to take up the Florida issue. And what was his? I forget the particulars, but the problem with the legal stuff is that, you know, the legal the lawyers, and rightly so, right? They're always looking for precedent, and so if you go back, I mean, they tend to be conservative because they're looking. They don't want to be the first one to do something different, right? It's got to be a lockdown, pretty obvious violation for them to make a ruling that says, no, this is wrong. And they believe that, and they've waited patiently for someone to bring the suit, but it's a rare judge that has the courage to do something like that. Most of them will be facing arguments from, you know, the duopoly, from the status quo, saying, well, wait a minute, you know, 50 years that we had this, and this ruling that have said that we're fine, that we have a right to run our primaries as we choose, right? So, but no one's really stepped off and voted in our favor. That doesn't keep us from trying. But again, the main argument is that independents are being treated like second-class citizens. We're excluded from the choices that are made in the primaries that typically control the election. Like, incumbents are reelected 90% of the time. And so the real race is in the primary, and we don't even get to vote in most states, right? And so that's one of the arguments that we brought up. And the argument that others have brought up, but generally involve precedent, that no, it's been this way for a long time for a valid reason. The primaries were put into place to protect rights, and because the parties were making their choices in smoke-filled rooms, and the primaries opened it up to the voters, but we're not considered legitimate voters because we haven't joined a party. So,
right. And now you said are you a nationwide guy that goes to each state trying to fight for open primaries? I know you said you were in Virginia and you worked with Sam Razul. Do you focus? Are you the state coordinator here for the state?
I'm just a volunteer. I don't even have an official capacity. I started a group called the Virginia Independent Voters Association back in 2011, and we were the state affiliate of independent voting. And so I was kind of the main contact in Virginia for them. And that's how I met Sam, and I've written some op-eds that they helped get published, and I've testified along with Sam and others. So I've been in that capacity, but I'm just a volunteer. I'm not on a tour or anything like that. The spokesperson thing, like I've been around for a while. I know my way around it, and so Kathy's trusts me to speak on their behalf, but I don't have an official capacity.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just curious, like, how is it going? I know the way I didn't know if there was any type of movement inside the Virginia House of Delegates. Back in the last time I remember, 2015, we were trying to lower ballot access from 10% being major party status, just get it lower. Mm-hmm. And there was a Republican delegate, and I cannot remember. Bo Brown was our chair at the time, and I remember him saying that the guy was like, how many times do we got to vote this down before it quit? So it's pretty much immediately. I didn't know if there was any type of inside where you're getting any couple more people besides Sam or someone else,
No,
everyone talks about democracy until it's, like you said, until it's really put in front of the face, and then they're like, oh, we can't do that. We don't need any more. Just two's good enough.
Well, Sam's a good guy. Like I said, he made more than once. He put forth the bill that I think Open Primaries pretty much wrote, but he stood behind it. And but I went down there to Richmond, and when our turn came, he sort of tapped me on the knee, and he said, you gotta keep it under a minute, because we're the chair of the committee is really going to be irritated if we go any longer. Basically, what I learned is that the party decides, they stack the committees, and they pretty much already know what they're going to do. And so it's just a show. And it's no different. It's no different on Capitol Hill, right? The party in charge stacks the deck in their favor, and they pretend to listen to the other side's arguments. They open it to the public, but they just sit there, and when it comes to vote, they vote what they already decided they were going to do. And so that was the case. Is that Sam, he gave it a shot. That it was part of the record, and I got my 1 minute of argument, but our fate was sealed. That's just the way it works.
Okay. All right. Well, we're at the 50-minute mark. You've gave us some good information about open primaries. I thank you for coming on. So you go to openprimaries.org. Is there anywhere else they can letusvote.org is the side project you guys are running. But openprimaries.org is where they can find out more information about you, right? Okay.
Yeah. And I mentioned some another Center for Election Science is worth checking out. They're got a different answer from ranked choice voting. It's approval voting. You learn more about that there. I mentioned a book. If you're going to pick, I could list a dozen of them, but one that I would really recommend is written by Catherine Gale and Michael Porter, called The Politics Industry. Very well written.
Okay.
Just talks about how the whole game is rigged. And
Oh,
they've got
that's
their
a
own
happy book.
Yeah.
Yeah, get you motivated.
Yeah.
Learning how you
Yeah.
get it's all that's uphill battle. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on.
All right.
I'm going to
Appreciate
share
it.
this throughout all my things, and we will talk. Good luck, and hope to see you shortly.
Okay.
All righty.
Thanks, Brian.
Goodbye.